Hello, this is Top 6. Now, Top 6 is a show that we do that checks in on what other clubs are up to under normal circumstances. And I've got a lovely domestic agenda here that I've written, which basically part of it discusses what Ederson's up to in Granit Xhaka and Sunderland. And we were doing Gutter before with Mo and Stu. We also had Pete Bolster in. And then we were going to do Top 6. And then suddenly the Isak news broke. So what we decided to do is put Gutter out as audio only, get the cameras back together, and as quick as possible get into this. So this is brought to you in conjunction with Saley. It's a new eSIM service from our friends at NordVPN. You go on holiday, you get this eSIM in your phone and you go from there. It's 200 countries and 8 regions all the way through. You can download the app on your phone and work through it from there, see the plans. If you're an Anfield Wrap subscriber, you can use the QR code that's on the screen right now, and you can take advantage of the service by downloading Saley in the App Store. Make sure you check out using the code TAW, 15% off your first purchase, and go from there. So that's everything that you need on Saley. Do check it out in the description as well. Thank you very much to them. But as I say, this has now become an emergency Top 6 / Gutter, putting it all together to discuss that Alexander Isak, reports have come in as we walked out that he has told Newcastle he wants to explore leaving.
I mean, I was giddy before on the Gutter. I'm completely lost
I think
it now.
it's spun round.
Yeah. I was saying to Mo then, I mean, I hate all the wording on Twitter with things like, it's a bomber and all this, but this is a bomber. You know, and this is, if anything's going to be a bomber kind of transfer story, getting him reaching the stage now when he's told them, lads, I want to get off. We're
He's
now
not boarded the plane and he said to them, I want to go.
I mean, you now, he's burning bridges now. He's burning bridges. The stuff that now this has come out that he has said he wants to go in so many words. We're now at the point potentially of no return for the fan base as well. It also potentially helps the owners save a little bit of face because his hand is forced because nobody wants an unhappy player and yada yada yada. I am excited, Neil.
It's fascinating because this was the next step that we weren't necessarily sure he was going to take, because we have to remember, up until the end of the season, he looked very happy at Newcastle. I mean, he'd won the big trophy, they got into the Champions League. You could see in a world where he would be like, okay, we'll play in the Champions League and we'll see where we get to at the end of this summer. But no, whatever has been on the table for Liverpool has been enticing enough for him to say, no, I want this Newcastle thing to end now, and I want to get to the next stage in my career. And what that might do is it might bridge the one biggest problem there is at the moment, which is Liverpool's valuation and Newcastle's valuation. Because as Stu said, once a player's come out and said that he's started to agitate and said he's unhappy, then Newcastle's strength in being able to say, well, we're definitely going to sell at this point and we're not going to entertain anything lower than that, that might start to weaken once the player starts to make it clear that him being still at the club beyond the end of the season, at the end of the summer, would not be what he wants at all, and it would make it more difficult for everyone else to deal with.
When you've got this situation where I think there's a conflict at the heart of what's been going on from the Newcastle perspective, which is solely this. They're of the view, rightly, he is an exceptional player. Could be, if we take out the Haaland, I think he's a more all-round footballer than Haaland, but I want to be clear about this, I don't want to say this down the camera, especially when it's going on for free on YouTube, there's every chance Haaland just scores 50 goals next season, because that's what he is. He is an absolute machine. So, people might say, well, Isak's a better player than Haaland, but Haaland could just bang 50. If you take Haaland out of the equation, possibly Mbappe out of the equation.
More valuable player.
Yeah. It's up there as a conversation, but I'm prepared to say 50 goals is pretty valuable.
Yes.
there is with it, Mo, though, as I say, you take maybe Mbappe out of the equation as well. He is, I think there's a general acceptance, the best number 9 there is. Paris Saint-Germain haven't played with one. They've used Dembele in the role as a false one, so it's a little bit different. But my point here, though, is that's what he is. Newcastle saying his valuation will be the other side of 100 million. Let's just sort of end there. But you're not paying him like that.
No.
And that's, for me, that's the conflict that Newcastle have now created. That's what the circumstances created. But you either reward the player, and supposedly that will put Newcastle into a place they don't want to be in terms of the wider wage structure.
Yeah, and I mean, we heard the rumours yesterday even, that the number was £300,000 a week was what he wanted. And to be honest, when I first heard that story, I thought, they'll probably do that, so he's probably going to stay. But now the fact that all this has happened makes me think that they said no, that is too much for us. Yeah. And that is a bit of an issue for them, because if you are trying to become an elite team, if you're trying to keep hold of elite footballers and have more than one, you're going to need to factor into your structure that there are always going to be some people who are that good, who are going to deserve and earn that much money. If you have no room in your wage structure for any £300,000 a week players, you're not going to keep elite players. And you mentioned the fact that he's in the top echelon of forwards. He's certainly the best forward who's going to be potentially moving clubs. Like, I think Mbappe and Haaland aren't going to be leaving where they're at for any time soon. So that makes him the most saleable asset in the most high-profile position on the pitch. So, as you say, if you're saying to selling clubs, if you're saying to him and his agent, well, we value you at this much in terms of you're ever going to leave, the fact that they aren't able to say we value this much in terms of how much we're going to give you completely weakens that argument.
Newcastle feels to me to be strategically in a bad place, Stu, and I think they have been maybe on this for an extended period of time. We know there isn't a director of football currently operating at Newcastle. Mitchell's moved on, Ashworth went to United, which now just looks a profound error for everyone involved, Manchester United, Newcastle United, and Dan Ashworth, Stu. To me, this is the oddity of where they've managed to end up. They're so out of control of a situation they should have had pretty decent control of. Newcastle, the best possible replacements for Isak could well have been Ekitike. They've maybe lost an opportunity to get after him by virtue of not responding to what Liverpool's offer was last week. The player has some agency, and the idea that he's going to flex that muscle weakens their level of control. They're struggling at the minute to pin down a deal even for someone like Johan Visser. It's been a transfer window where, Alanga aside, they've been struggling to get the targets that they need. It does feel like a situation that they are just unable to control in the way they'd like.
Yeah, well, there's three different narratives coming out of Newcastle at the moment. There's the manager's voice who's saying, he decided to send them home with the Celtic pre-season and
players have short careers.
All of that. You've got the ownership. Where the message out there seems to be he's going nowhere, he's the owner's favourite player and blah, 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 blah. And this is very much an owner who's used to getting what he wants in his life. And then you've also got now the player. And the player is doing what he needs to do now to apply that agency to try and take control of his own career. Because what I am absolutely clear on now, you and I were having a discussion before on the gutter about whether the potential would be there for Liverpool to go next season for Isak. I think Isak has been told in no uncertain terms that we want you, we will move heaven and earth to get you, but we want you now. We will move on. We will move on, and this time next year the likelihood is we will not be back because we've got business to do now. We've got things to win now, and the squad will look very different then. So I think that has pushed Isak into a position where he desperately wants to come to Liverpool. He knows how much Liverpool want him, and he knows that he doesn't want to miss that bus because next year he will be going on 27. And I think at that point, historically Liverpool don't go that big for players of that age. Now is the sweet spot.
I think as well, the other thing about the difference between next season and this season, if Isak goes to Liverpool now, with the way that everybody else's team's set up, there's a very, very, very high percentage that he can win the Premier League. So if he waits another season, he's missing out on one Premier League winners' medal. He may get more once he gets there, but him moving to Liverpool now makes Liverpool overwhelming favourites. Now, obviously, football's football, things can happen, we don't know. But if you're him, you're seeing how clear Liverpool were of everyone else last season, and then you're seeing the quality of players Liverpool are bringing in this season. You're thinking, I haven't got time to waste. I want to get into this team now. I want my medal trophy to start now.
But my thing on this is I do think that there is a world where Liverpool could end up going back in if it doesn't happen this season. But part of the reason for that is back to this control point from Newcastle's point of view, because they are going to have to come to a new arrangements with Isak one way or another. And if that arrangement is no arrangement, then the player's only got 2 years left on his deal come next summer, and then you're moving from there. If that arrangement's a new contract, surely he ends up insisting that there's a clause that's put in that reduces the amount of money that someone like Liverpool would have to pay. And this is back to my control point. No matter whether Liverpool would or wouldn't wait, whether Liverpool might look again in January as per the Barcelona-Coutinho comparison, no matter what, my point here now is that this whole situation has just spiralled out of Newcastle being able to say we can manoeuvre our pieces in any sort of meaningful way. They are now just left having to constantly deal with the record, which might involve cutting off noses to spite faces. We've seen that in football before.
Yep.
But, you know, and there is a way back. There's always a way back for a footballer. Start scoring goals, people love you,
Yeah.
especially if you're a centre-forward. But all of that said, I think, you know, I would be stunned if Isak is still at Newcastle at the start of the 2026-2027 season.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would not be stunned at all if he's still at Newcastle at the start of this season. And like we've said previously, once the football starts, positions can change in both directions. It might be that once Isak gets into the team, he starts playing with his international teammate Alanga, and he's like, you know what, I can deal with this for another 12 months. We've got a World Cup coming up. I don't want to get into a situation where I'm not being played at all. Like, I don't think Newcastle would ever go nuclear and you know, put him with the kids or whatever, because to be honest, it's harder to do that in the modern age. You know, a lot of players have got in their contracts that they can't do that. So I don't ever think Newcastle will cut their nose to spite the face to that extent. But you can see a world where Isak's very much like, well, okay, if this is what it's going to be for the next 12 months, I can live with that, I guess. But it's still not going to necessarily be happy. It's still not going to be optimum. I think if Newcastle now are able to find, if they're able to get Visser over the line and then they're able to move over to a secondary target between now and the end of the window, I think that we might see it happen. I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool travelled to St James's Park on that Monday in late August with 7 days to go in the window, and Alexander Isak is not in the squad. And he's not in the Liverpool squad, he's not in the Newcastle squad, he's in that little limbo there.
I mean, I would put money on that. I think that's, of all the other the situation that's going on, I think that's probably the most likely. But as you were saying,
there's another downside to that from Liverpool's point of view. My concern here is squad size in terms of the number of forward options. I think anyway, if you do Isak, the idea of being able to do another big one after that is unlikely. I think, you know, you've got, at the minute, Liverpool have got 5 senior forward options that you're comfortable with because you're including Diaz and Nunez. I'm not including Chiesa. I'm not going to include Elliott for the purposes of this. I'm not including Doak. So Liverpool got 5 at the minute. My view is for Liverpool for the rest of this window, it needs to be 1 in, 1 out at this point. If they're hanging on and hanging on and hanging on for Isak, my concern becomes you end up missing the boat on other targets because it's such an amount of money to do Isak. I think Liverpool are prepared to spend, but even Liverpool have got there's means that they need to live within. But my other sort of concern is this is a season where rather than 4, in that if Diaz and Nunez go and Liverpool do Isak and stay there because they say, well, that's us. This is a season where you can make a stronger argument for 6 than you can for 4 because you're going to lose Mo Salah from the 14th of December until realistically the 21st of January.
I think you're right, but I also think that Liverpool have got, you know, there's actual history of Liverpool leaving themselves short in terms of quality and numbers to wait for the right guy. And Virgil van Dijk, if the player is that exceptional. And I, you know, would not be surprised if that scenario that Mo outlined there played out and Liverpool have signed Isak by the end of the window.
But you wouldn't want to move forward with only 4 forwards, Stu.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you, but I and this is not necessarily what I want in terms of, and you know, I want them all, and I want, you know, the security blankets of them all done now, so we've got the whole pre-season or the most of it. But how this plays out might be somewhat different, and there might be a little bit of a nod and a wink between Newcastle and Liverpool earlier than actually the transfer goes through to get through that scenario of that match, because Newcastle will not want Isak lining up against them in that game. I completely agree with that. So there might be a little bit of a diddle there. Yes, you know, someone also needs to speak a bit of common sense there to Newcastle, just in terms of such a frustrating window for them. They've not been able to get anything done. The whispers are about a 29-year-old centre forward that's going to be underwhelming for the fan base as well. When you move him on, you shift the PSR completely on its head, and they could go mega bucks. You know, the opportunity that the fans and the owners have been waiting for a long time is there for them if they do this, and I wonder whether we'll reach that stage.
But I want to go back to the Liverpool point though, Stu. I think this is important for me because, as I say, this is the thing I have as a concern. I think squad side's dead interesting this summer, but even if they do Isak, it's possible because of the cost of Isak, they still need to do a centre back as well.
Yeah.
Isak's the last forward option that they buy, and I don't see them starting the season with Ekitike, Isak and Nunez as being the three options. Diaz is strongly linked away to Bayern Munich. If anything, it puts urgency in Darwin's desire to get out and all that sort of in terms of club which he might go. My point here is that Liverpool do not want to start the season short.
No.
Some people might think 5 is short. I think 5 with the reality of what Salah is, and if you've done Ekatike, I think 5 is about what you'll get plus someone like Rio to bounce around there. You might hold on to Doak until January the 31st. But Liverpool do not want to start with 4. And my worry, genuinely, I do have a worry that if you go so heavy on Isak, having done Ekatike, you end up in a situation where you could just end up feeling as though we're down an option, especially in the context of AFCON.
I completely see your point, and I think that the timing of how these go through is key to that point as well. I think that underscores where you're coming from, because for argument's sake, if Isak was done in the next week or so, for argument's sake, okay, in that perfect scenario, I do think Liverpool will still potentially look to sign another forward, a left-sided forward, but I do not think it'll be the next player that they buy. I think Liverpool will then be looking to see what happens in terms of the outgoings of the 4 players, the Elliots, the Chiesa, the Nunes, the Diaz, all of that. But I think the next player Liverpool will buy will be a centre-half.
Yeah.
And I think they will wait and see what happens with the outgoings, and there then could be a longer play right at the end of the window, opportunistic or whatever, whether it's a Rodrigo or it's a Fofana. I was saying to Mo before that if we do sign Isak, I think if you can forget Rodrigo this summer, I think the more likely would be the cheaper option of Fofana, which, by the way, I'm fine with because he looks great fun.
He does look great fun.
So, and I'm not worried about goals, because he hasn't got a lot of goals for Fofana, but where you're looking at Mo Salah, you're looking at Isak, you're looking at Ekatike, you're looking at Wright, you're thinking this isn't Gakpo. You're not overly concerned about goals at that point. Yes, wouldn't it be wonderful if we signed Rodrigo instead of because wow, but I think Isak would make another cheaper option more likely, but I think it would be the last thing they do, not the next thing they do.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree with you in terms of 4 would be worrying into a lot of ways, but I think
if it was a non-AFCON year, I could say, well, you know what, you can roll with the punches.
But look at who the forwards Liverpool are still linked with: Malik Fofana, Rodrigo, Isak. What are they not? Right wingers. What will we need when Salah's away? A right winger.
I think Fofana could play there.
He hasn't.
That's because Cherky plays. You have a little look, he actually does some more in the year before. I pulled the numbers and he does a little bit more right wing in the year before, but then Cherky nails that slot down coming off that right-hand side with his left foot. 37% left foot usage.
I still think that...
Got that looked up.
Yeah.
I asked that question very specifically of the wonderful Lily at StatsBot. 37% of the times he uses his left foot. Scores goals with his left foot.
I still think that there might well be an old school Liverpool style diddle in terms of someone else becoming a forward option who from within who we haven't seen. So we've mentioned previously about the Frimpong idea, and you rightly said that only works if Bradley stays fit. But then we saw Szoboszlai play as a right back, and we've seen Szoboszlai play as a right forward for Leipzig. So I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool have got a world in which he becomes one of those options.
I mean, to do this in a practical sense, though, I'm absolutely fine with. I think Szoboszlai will be, in inverted commas, wild next season.
Yeah.
I think he'll move around a number of different places and a number of different positions. But this isn't the idea that you're doing without this player when you're 1 game a week.
Yeah.
My point here is that this is the point where you've just come off the back of the Champions League run has actually ended when AFCON starts. So you've been having all the 2 games a week. You've had the international break in November. So the miles are on the clock. This is the point of the season where in English football it breaks everybody. Mm-hmm. And so the idea that that's the point where you're potentially 1 down. And as I say, I'm not talking here about 6 forwards. I'm saying I want them to start the season with 5.
Yeah.
If you're doing 2 for every position, someone would say, well, it'd be 6. But I think it's hard to do 2 for every position with Salah. The reality, and I haven't given Salah all the money. So I'm already saying, in the 2 for every position theory, you're already 1 down.
Yeah.
If you're then saying, well, actually, we're going to go forward 2 down because we feel as though Szoboszlai can do this, and Wright can do this, and Frimpong can do this, and we'll have a young player, that's all well and good. But when suddenly you're looking at the injury list first week of December, and you're missing 6, and Salah's about to move on.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, Liverpool, though, have traditionally not really made any transfer moves around AFCON, even when they had Salah and Mane missing. So it would feel like a change of tack. It's not impossible. I mean, to a lot of people this
They had
summer.
5 forwards last summer. I'm not asking them to do more. I'm not
No.
asking them to put an insurance policy in place for AFCON. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you've got a situation where last season you win the league with 5 forwards and part of your superpower was you had 5 good forwards, where the 5th one was as good as Manchester City's 3rd best or Arsenal's 3rd best in terms of output over the course of the season. I'm saying, can we just continue with that? My one sole worry about this Isak stuff is you end up in a universe where you've only got 4.
Oh, I get that, and as I said before, the timing is an issue there. But I do think that they'll, as I said, go after another one. Isak, if that goes late into the day, like the scenario you talked about before, then that does complicate the domino effect of what I was saying before about a centre forward, a centre back, and then the winger at the end. The other thing, though, that when you're naming your set of forwards there and going in with 4, the other little caveat to have is they do have Wirtz that can be considered within the forward line. That's the only thing there, because he's not in the 4 that you're listing there. You consider him midfielder. I think he will be predominantly an attacking midfielder. But if we are struggling, I think that's where he could end up.
I think that's all, again, but this is back to my... Yeah, I agree with that, but this then throws us back to... But we're now playing Szoboszlai right wing, right back, because there's been an issue there to play Frimpong right hand side to move. You can only it's the Rafa in a different use of the Rafa's blanket metaphor, but you can only pull this blanket in so many directions before it rips. And my one thing is, I would not want Liverpool to go into next season with fewer forwards than they went into for this season, because there's already a big thing that we can put a big circle around that we know happens, which is when Liverpool's best attacker disappears for this run of games before you get into anything else.
I think that will be the plan. You know, I think that the plan will be they're not going to have spent the level of money that we're talking about them spending, and leaving themselves short. I think that's not going to be part of the plan. But also, I think what we have to appreciate is that the way Liverpool run their transfers, they don't see an end point. So we will see an end point at the end of the transfer window, and we'll be thinking about this season, and we'll be thinking about AFCON and all that type of stuff. But Liverpool will they'll be thinking about squad building. Yeah. And okay, if they don't get the left winger, they get him at Christmas, or they get him at, and there's enough within to cover like a Viet scenario, or somebody else can step in for that period of time. So what they're more interested in is increasing that value and the success of that squad, building that squad to where they want to go. And they won't be held to ransom, I don't think, by a particular date.
No, I agree. I think that they will, and that confidence will be part of their bargaining chip with Isak and anyone else. I don't think that they're going to be backed into a corner where time is going to force them to change their plans. And again, we've seen that previously. So there's going to be some things that we probably not even considered yet that come into the table. But yeah, I would be surprised if they were worryingly short. I wouldn't be surprised if we go into the season thinking, I'd like to have maybe had one more.
Okay, there's the ups and tiny down, but mostly ups about the prospect of Liverpool signing Alexander Isak. Feels as though it's edged ever closer. This was meant to be top 6. This is now going to be badged as being badged as an emergency gutter. So to be dead quick, Arsenal sorted Gyökeres. He is a number 9. He will score when he gets chances. It's odd they've ended up there. Mosquera's getting sorted out. Saliba was linked away. Fanate News could be part of that. Chelsea won Hato. That's dead smart. He's a left back alternative, and Colwell cover potentially. 40 million's reasonable. Chelsea won Simons. This is stupid. Just another in that part of the pitch. Who does it actually help? Certainly, as João Pedro looks good playing off the front. Newcastle won fifth, so we've sort of touched onto that there. We'll be seen through Isak lens, but they will need another forward who can link well. Ederson, situation's long been odd, might be going to Turkey. Sunderland may well be buying Granit Xhaka. They're having a go. I've done some with Steve Goldsmith on that as well. That'll be out as audio. Morgan Gibbs-White's in Portugal. That's been sort of emergency equal to sort of top 6. Stu, Mo, I pointed the wrong one. See you later on.